Trump is demanding many Arab nations normalize ties with Israel as a condition for peace with Iran. The US president wrote a lengthy Truth Social post on Monday saying, after all the work done by the United States to try and pull this very complex puzzle together, it should be mandatory that all of these countries at a minimum simultaneously sign onto the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords are an agreement first brokered by Trump in 2020 to establish diplomatic relations between Israel and nearby nations. The first to sign on were the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, which broke a long-standing taboo and became the first Arab states to recognize Israel in a quarter of a century. Morocco, Sudan, and Kazakhstan followed suit. The accords are often criticized for undermining the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative, which set prerequisites for relations with Israel, prerequisites that are no closer to being realized. These include a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from occupied territories, the establishment of a Palestinian state, and a just settlement for Palestinian refugees. Pakistan swiftly rejected Trump's proposal. Otherwise, it has been met with silence. So let's find out what the other countries are thinking. Hala Rharrit was the Arabic language spokesperson for the US State Department before she became the first US diplomat to resign over the war on Gaza. Hala, welcome to MEELive. Tell us, how have Arab countries targeted in Trump's post taken his ultimatum?
Quite honestly, first of all, thank you for having me. They've taken it as an embarrassment, to be quite frank. To be honest, this is absolute blackmail in public. I mean, when we're talking about the US president coercing and mandating that regional allies decide to go into the Abraham Accords, these are not behind the scenes conversations. This was him at the White House demanding this. And if they don't agree, what will happen? He's saying they don't get a deal. What does it mean for regional countries here if they don't get a deal? It means that the US and Israel go back to war with Iran. They start striking Iran. And then what happens? Iran starts striking these countries, whether it's Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. That is absolute blackmail. The reason why these countries in the region are getting hit in the first place is because there are US air bases here. Now, this used to be means of so-called protection, but the reality is that it's an absolute liability. Now, it's not only just a liability, but they're stuck as pawns in Israel's game, while the US is backing Israel in trying to actually make them a target. So as you mentioned, Matilda, it's been mostly quiet. Pakistan is the only country that outright said no. But I think the others right now don't know what to do because it really is an existential threat for the countries of the region.
Now, in particular, Trump said Saudi Arabia and Qatar should immediately sign the agreements and everybody else should follow suit. How likely is that to happen? I think Saudi Arabia in particular, we're curious about. How likely is that to happen?
I don't think it's likely at all to happen. And I think this is actually Netanyahu's game, because he knows that Saudi Arabia is not going to sign on to the Abraham Accords now. It will be domestically extremely difficult. Also, there are rivalries between Saudi Arabia and the UAE with regards to the Abraham Accords that they are very familiar with. Saudi Arabia is not going to do that at this point. Qatar has been hit by Israel. Qatar has been hit by Iran. They've been hit by both sides. There's no way, especially after 2 years of an ongoing genocide in Gaza, that either of those two countries are going to sign the Abraham Accords. Also, it's by means of coercion, and I'll repeat the word blackmail. It's not going to happen. But the goal, I don't think the goal for Netanyahu is that they actually sign on to the Abraham Accords. I think he probably sold it to Trump as, oh, this would be a historic win for you. You'd be able to do a win. But he knows very well that there's no way that's going to happen. So what happens is that there's just instability. The deal is not reached. There's no diplomatic solution. And it's just perpetual instability in the region with all of this kinetic movement and fights back and forth like we had today. And at the end of the day, Israel's winning because then Netanyahu gets to continue the onslaught in Gaza and the onslaught in Lebanon while the world looks away.
I mean, that's sort of the elephant in the room. The Abraham Accords typically, have hinged on conditions to do with Palestine. And as you say, bombardment in Palestine has escalated. It has also escalated by Israel in Lebanon. Trump didn't even mention Palestine in his demands, does he think he can write Palestine out of the Abraham Accords?
I mean, this has been the criticism of the Abraham Accords from the very beginning, right? Initially, at its outset, I think it was sold as a means of getting a two-state solution. You normalize with Israel towards a path for a Palestinian state, but that clearly hasn't happened, and quite the contrary has happened. Not only has there not been a path to a Palestinian state, but there's been an ongoing genocide, a genocide that is not ending. I mean, I think we all woke up yesterday, which was it's Eid, it's a celebratory day, and instead of waking up to try to celebrate the Eid holidays, we all woke up to the most horrific and gruesome images of bombardments on civilians in Gaza. It's not stopping, and today the news from Netanyahu that he has ordered the IDF to take over 70% of the Gaza Strip. I mean, the genocide is ongoing, so it's very clear that even the Abraham Accords, quote unquote, as it was originally promoted in the first Trump administration, is nothing to the effect of what it is today. At this point, it's a blackmail game to try to continue the conflict, to try to ensure that the countries in the region are basically stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that a diplomatic solution is not reached. The goal is perpetual instability, because that, again, I'm going to repeat, works in Israel's favor. It does not work in the United States' favor, nor does it work in the regional countries' favor whatsoever.
Now, Trump's Truth Social post also mentioned that Iran could join the accords. This is despite the decades of hostility. Is that worth us discussing as a prospect here?
I mean, the level of delusion, it's, as a former diplomat, and I served in the State Department for 18 years, it's just between that and yesterday he threatened to bomb Oman. I'm just going to say it's American diplomacy, or the semblance of whatever remained of American diplomacy, is practically dead in the region. I mean, it makes no sense. First of all, the State Department is gutted. There are no more experts there whatsoever. And so I think literally there's a delusion in the White House, and whatever he's being fed, he's repeating. But obviously that's never going to happen. And again, I'll say the goal, I think, is to make him look or think like he's the winner. But at the end of the day, I think it's just going to continue to prolong the conflict.
Let's do a hypothetical, right? With the Abraham Accords, Trump makes it sound simple. Everyone signs the accords and peace will reign. Say these states do agree and they do sign the Abraham Accords. Could that achieve stability and prosperity in the region?
An accord does not ensure that. You have to have an end to systematic oppression of the Palestinians. You have to have an end to an apartheid regime. You have to have an end to an ongoing genocide, to an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. It requires absolute isolation of the state of Israel the way it is today, just like we had isolation of apartheid South Africa. Before we're able to do that, then we're not going to be able to have a Palestinian state. You also have to have not an extremist right government leading Israel. You have to have people that actually want peace on the Israeli side. There are peacemakers in Israel, and those voices have to be elevated. And as long as they're not, then we have these extremist genociders that all their aim is to do is to exterminate Palestinians. Abraham Accords is just a means of coercion.
And finally, just as you are yourself in the region, can you tell me how people are feeling as we see this escalatory language, as we see, the fragile ceasefire really start to fragment? How are people feeling? Is there a fear of the resumption of full-scale warfare?
Absolutely. People are absolutely on edge. I mean, you wake up to a different tweet every morning, not knowing if there's going to be peace or war. And at this point, both sides have said that they're going to target civilian infrastructure. So if this starts again, Trump has already reiterated multiple times that he's going to hit Iran's desalination plants, that he's going to hit Iran's power grid, and that Iran in turn is going to retaliate and do the same to the Gulf countries. I don't think the world completely grasps what that means in desert countries. If you hit desalination plants, many of these countries in the region become uninhabitable within days. We're talking about a humanitarian catastrophe that we have not witnessed in this part of the world in a very long time. And I'm talking about this even with the genocide in Gaza, right? The world is not grasping. And the fact that we are teetering on this every single day as if it's normal, as if this is normalized. And I think I have to go, as someone who served in the region for almost 2 decades in the State Department, it is almost as if wars in the Middle East have been so normalized. People are just so used to people in this part of the world getting bombed. But the reality is that tragedy is tragedy. These mothers feel as much as mothers in Ukraine or in the United States or anywhere else. But also, and critically for the West, I want to stress this war is not going to only be a Middle Eastern war if it starts again. The global economy is going to face serious consequences that the West, Europe is not ready to handle whatsoever. So again, we all have to do our part, because it's clear that the White House is delusional and we're literally on the brink of it every single day with all of the rhetoric coming out of the White House.
Hala, Rharrit, thank you so much for your insights and your time. Now, Trump's decision to make the Abraham Accords a condition for peace reflect a general consistency over what he set out to achieve when initiating war with Iran. The US president has offered mixed rationale, ranging from preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, to destroying its conventional military capabilities, to securing regime change as a whole. His updates on progress are similarly inconsistent. After claiming this weekend that a peace deal was largely negotiated, he later insisted the US was in no rush and authorized strikes on his rival. The peace deal currently under discussion would extend the shaky ceasefire for 60 days. Iran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for sanctions waiver on oil sales. Iran's nuclear program would be left for later discussion, and that remains a major sticking point, along with Tehran's insistence on controlling the Strait of Hormuz in the long term and Israel's ongoing attacks on Lebanon. Now, into this matrix, Trump has added normalization with Israel, a diplomatic issue that has eluded US presidents since Israel was first founded. So why does he think this is a good idea? Here to help us understand Washington's viewpoint is Aaron David Miller, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, welcome to MEELive. Can you explain what lies behind Trump's somewhat confusing bid to tie peace in Iran to the Abraham Accords?
I'm sorry, I don't think I got the first part of that question. Tying the Abraham Accords to the Iran deal?
How do we understand Trump's decision to do this? What do you think motivated Trump?
You've been watching this president in Trump 1.0, and you've now seen him almost in the first 2 years of his presidency. I think the answer has to do with his sense of grandiosity on one hand and his sense of insecurity on the other. I think he understands, perhaps, that the war of choice he launched has now turned into what I call a flawed, quote unquote, peace of necessity. And the reality is the agreement that will be reached will be far below what the administration initially set out to do. Cut ties with proxies, restrict ballistic missiles, regime change. He now confronts a situation where the two things he needs to essentially achieve, reopening the straits without paying a price on terms that the U.S. and the international community can accept on one hand, and number two, trying to impose enough restrictions on Iran's enrichment capacity to justify this as a success. So I think he understands both those things are going to be difficult to achieve, so he's loaded onto them an unrealistic notion of basically expanding the Iran deal to include expansion of the Abraham Accords. And I think it's simply a misreading of where the Gulf is right now. With the exception of the Emiratis, who have doubled down and clearly see much of their future as tethered both to Israel and the U.S., the other Gulf states, the Omanis, the Qataris, the Bahrainis already joined the Abraham Accords, but the Saudis in particular have no interest in tethering themselves to an Israeli government that is annexing the West Bank, probably ramping up for a major military operation in Gaza, and still occupies parts of Lebanon. So I think this was an idea more appropriate to a galaxy far, far away rather than to the realities back here on planet Earth.
If that's the case, then this really throws a spanner in the peace progress. And I wondered there, is Trump bowing to pressure from within his party to do exactly that? I mean, there's been a lot of pushback from Republicans about the alleged progress of peace negotiations. He made his Truth Social post on US Memorial Day as he was facing criticism from, for example, US Senator Lindsey Graham, who wrote on X, if it's perceived that the region had a deal with Iran that allows the regime to survive, we will have poured gasoline on the conflicts in Lebanon and Iraq. Senator Ted Cruz called a peace deal a disastrous mistake. Is this him bowing to pressure from the Republican Party to essentially slow down and raise the stakes of the peace negotiations?
Well, if this were a serious issue, and we're treating it as if it is a serious issue, it's not a serious issue. It's not going to stop, assuming the terms are acceptable to Iran and the US, it is not going to stop creating an agreement. And number two, it will not stop, because it isn't serious and it cannot be implemented, criticism from members of the Republican Party and others who will argue that Trump, far from weakening and emboldening the regime, has essentially strengthened it. This is a hard situation for this president to spin his way out of.
So this is delusional? Sorry. Is this symbolic from Trump, or just delusional?
I think like mice in a maze, the media, and I would probably, since I'm in the public conversation, I guess I'd have to include myself here. He's got, like mice in a maze, he has everyone running around trying to analyze seriously and take seriously his latest social media posts. But they're not serious. He was going to turn Gaza into the Riviera. Whatever happened to that?
So you think this will just disappear?
He was going to annex Greenland. Whatever happened to that? He was going to solve the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Whatever happened to that? So we are witting and willing dupes in his gaslighting.
Okay.
And anyone who spends more than a minute or two trying to figure out what Donald Trump meant by this or that is being taken in. And he's doing exactly what he wants all of us to
Everyone
do.
stop watching. We're all wasting our time. I suppose, okay, another analysis that has come out of those discussions is that Trump is trying to get Netanyahu to play ball, right? Israel has criticized progress in the peace negotiations. It's continually jeopardizing those negotiations by bombing Lebanon. Did Trump raise the Abraham Accords to entice Netanyahu to play ball?
Yeah, I can't stress this point strongly enough. When I worked for administrations from Jimmy Carter to Bush 43, okay? And I followed closely both Obama and Biden. No American president has ever said publicly to an Israeli about an Israeli prime minister that Benjamin Netanyahu will do what I want him to do. You can dig out the quote. It's almost exact. Trump has enormous leverage over this man because the most important event that is going to occur in his political life is not Iran, it's not Lebanon, it's not Gaza, it's not the West Bank. It's elections. And Netanyahu is vulnerable. He needs Trump to be an active campaigner in his reelection. So, just to put a cap on this, if negotiations between the US and Iran lead to what you and I, normal humans presumably, would call a good deal for both sides, and the Iranians say to Trump, look, we need a ceasefire in Lebanon. And if you can get me that, we can have an agreement. Trump's going to pick up the phone and he's going to tell Netanyahu what to do. And guess what? He's going to do it.
Wow. And so then tell us, in all of this, where is Palestine? Because while the states that Trump mentions have not said, oh, great, we're going to sign up to the Abraham Accords, none of them have also come out and said, well, hey, there's a big sticking point here, and that is what's happening in Palestine.
Well, in large part because, frankly, if you ask me what to do, the only useful deployment of the phrase river to the sea is to describe the problem of what do you do with the 15 to 16 million humans, just over 10 million Israelis, including 2 million Palestinian citizens of Israel, who suffer systemic discrimination, and Palestinians on the West Bank, in Gaza, and in East Jerusalem. What to do about this problem? And I worked on this for most of my professional life, not succeeding, I might add. If you ask me right now, what is realistic, feasible, I couldn't come up with an answer. And key Arab states know it. Look, as far as the Arab states and the Palestinian issue are concerned, let's make one thing unmistakably clear. And frankly, maybe you have an answer, I don't. In the wake of October 7th and Hamas's indiscriminate killing of civilians, the sexual predation, the mutilation, the taking of hostages, the killing of hostages, the Israelis launched a military campaign to prosecute their war against Hamas, and they killed, even if you deduct 20,000 of the 70+ thousand Palestinians who have died. Let's say there were 25,000 Hamas fighters. The Arab world, in the face of this disaster, some call it a genocide, Israel's treaty partners did nothing. Israel's Abraham Accord partners did nothing to impose significant costs or consequences on the US or Israel. You tell me why that was.
Well,
and then you can see, maybe you can see and answer your own question. To what degree are key Arab states willing and able to stand up, forget in defense of Palestine, they're willing to stand up to redeem Palestine? And frankly, my read on this, particularly watching the Emiratis behave, is the answer is absolutely nothing. They've done nothing, and they probably won't do nothing. So I don't know. I would agree with your point that the Saudis will not agree to any kind of normalization agreement without something credible and serious from the Israelis on the Palestinian issue. And frankly, I can't see, as we approach Israeli elections, the Israelis are not going to make any decisions along those lines. And they're probably, before we came on, I just saw a media post. Netanyahu has now ordered the IDF to expand the area of Gaza under Israeli control from 60% to 70%. The Israelis are ramping up, in my judgment, for a major military operation in the area that Hamas controls, the 30 to 47%, where roughly 2 million Palestinians reside. 1.5 million, I might add, displaced from their original homes. This is coming, unless Trump says no, between now and September.
Well, as much as I would like to attempt to answer that very unsolvable, difficult question, I'm told you have a hard out at 5:40, which means I'm sadly going to have to let you go. Aaron David Miller.
It's been a great conversation, and anytime, just reach out. Happy to come back to chat further.
Thank you so much. It has really been a pleasure having. The whole team was very excited to get you on, so I'm sure we'll take you up on that offer.
I hope I didn't break too much crockery, and I didn't mean to appear to be abrupt or overly cynical. It's just that I think we have to look at the world the way it is if we have any hope of trying to reshape it to the way we want it to be.
I totally agree. Aaron David Miller,
Take care.
Thank you so much.